Yeah, it's a joke. It doesn't make any sense. I go to hit a guy, he touches the puck. It's not interference. I get high stick in the face. It's not a tripping call when you hit a guy clean on.
And did they give any further explanation?
No, arrogant.
Listen, everyone in the hockey world watched that game. We all know what happened. I'm not going to comment on them.
The entire hockey world definitely saw the horrible officiating last night, and maybe Dean Evison won't talk about it, but we sure will, and we will get into everything from Game 4 of the Wild vs. Stars. A game of absolute emotions, up and down for everybody at home, at the arena, on the bench. If you're Marcus Foligno, doesn't matter who you are, you got a lot of emotions after that game, and man, it just felt like we were the better team, honestly. I really, just watching that game, felt like the penalties really got in their heads. The refs got in our heads. Some pucks just didn't bounce our way. Power plays killed us. Gus was amazing. I don't know. Where do you guys want to start? Do you want to start with the refs? Do you want to start with some of the... I mean, Alex picked Kirill Kaprizov, and man, he had a lot of chances to fire some in the back of the net, but just didn't. Where should we start? Let's start with the officiating, maybe. I know, Gis, you have some remarks you'd like to make for Dean Evison, maybe, on his behalf.
Can I get fired? I tell you, I've been conflicted. I was fired up last night, and I'm going like, do we want to be just three guys just ripping on refs? And I think we present the facts. I mean, yeah. I took a look into this officiating crew's background. The referees last night were Kevin Pollock and Garrett Rank. Pollock and Rank. I kind of did some background checking and found out they've already been relieved of their duties in the Toronto-Tampa Bay series for one game where they decided to call 8 penalties against the Toronto Maple Leafs and only 3 against the Bolts. And so the NHL has
this
the performance. Yes.
This year they already were let go from that game, and now they're over here in Minnesota. Are you kidding me?
So the NHL has a performance-based system. These two have already been basically cut from any second-round refereeing already. So, and I know that they just can't go away in the playoffs. Unfortunately, these two end up in Minnesota for this game last night. And I think Dean said it. I mean, the hockey world saw... I think the most egregious was the penalty with under 5 minutes to play in basically a neutral zone area. This didn't deny any scoring chances whatsoever. Marcus Foligno lays a hit on, gets called for tripping, and comes up with blood all over his beak.
Yeah.
And Dallas scores a power play goal, which they've been awfully good on to make it 3-1. And we know what happened from here on out, despite the late goal, the 3-2 victory. But a little further digging on this referee Pollock in the 17 Stanley Cup Finals, Pittsburgh and Nashville Predators. He was basically petitioned by the Nashville fans to be fired by the National Hockey League for a very egregious no call in Game 6. Now that didn't cost the Nashville Predators a series. Pittsburgh beat them that year. But you start looking at the track records of he statistically, I mean, there are even NHL statistics on how they rate their referees, and he's at the bottom of the barrel, if not at the bottom of the barrel. So I'm just laying out some facts here. I think Minnesota hockey fans last night laid their emotions on the line, and a lot of people will be bitching about it today and up until puck drop tomorrow in Dallas for Game 5. But I just don't know how you make those calls. I don't think really I don't think it's a tripping penalty. I think you play on. I don't think you want any part of being a factor of a 1-goal hockey game in such a pivotal Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. So while it sounds like I'm ripping on them, I just wanted to present the facts and say that it was horrible refereeing last night.
Yeah, and I mean, I think every one of us on this podcast would agree that everybody's human. We all make mistakes. I fumble the intro sometimes. The refs are going to make mistakes. We don't expect them to be perfect, but yet the fact that they've already been let go or taken out of another series and then brought over to our series, I mean, as a fan, it kind of feels like the NHL is giving us their leftovers, right? I mean, first off, we've got the TV issue. We're getting 9 o'clock games at night. We're getting the East Coast bias. They're giving them all the good air times, and we're just getting kind of pushback and pushback. Finally, we got a half decent one yesterday, but I mean, come on. Giving us refs that have already been let go from another series in this playoffs, not even in the past, but also had a history in the past. I mean, as a fan, something is going on there. Like, what is your thoughts behind that, Alex?
No, the NHL has been very clear this playoffs that they are not a fan of either Minnesota or Dallas. Could be both. Seeing refs kicked out of one series and put into ours is really frustrating as a fan. I mean, I understand that, like, you need refs to ref games. Like, I'm sure they don't have an endless list of referees, but at the same time, it's the playoffs. And if this guy has had a continuous history of calling bad games, then why is he being let back? And more importantly, why is he being put on our series?
Especially in the playoffs. Like, I get it, regular season. These refs, they got to have a union, I assume, right? Like, umpires in the MLB, they're in there. They're all backing each other up. They all are like, we make mistakes. It happens. But in the playoffs, I feel like there should be some say, and there's got to be plenty of refs in the NHL that could step up and take their spot if they're going to get let go from another series, because there isn't 15 games going on in one day. There's 4.
Yeah, well, the NHL does have a performance-based system. I think we talked about it at the top here about rewarding referees for good performances. These are the referees that make the playoffs are based on the regular season and their performance, and these are the players that are the refs that will be judged on their first round and their inability to go on to the second round, or their ability to go on to the second round depends on their first round. And clearly these two and this crew, there's a linesman involved who's already been kind of whacked from the second round of the playoffs, that linesman last night, along with these two. So I don't know how you control that, but I do know that if you've been served notice that you weren't good enough to do kind of a marquee series with Toronto and Tampa Bay, when you get to Minnesota or you get to Dallas, you're on your game and you're trying extra hard not to be a factor in the game. And the old adage, the best refereeing jobs are the ones that you never see, holds true. And again, to me, the most egregious and abhorrent situation about the Foligno with, under 5 minutes to play tripping penalty where he gets bloodied is it's a clear no call if it's not denying a scoring chance, especially if you're a referee crew that's a little bit on academic probation already. And I don't know how otherwise to say it other than it's an unfortunate scenario. I don't think you could short staff and just have, 3 crews working, the 8 games right now. But it's game 4.
Don't they have? We talked about.
But guys, this is game 4. It's either a 3-1 advantage or this is such the swing game.
Yeah.
Just wear camouflage out there and do the right thing, and I don't think they did. I gotta say this, and I'm not a chronic complainer of officiating, but I tell you, I was just sick. I love this game so much. I just get sick when it's determined by other factors outside of the players that are on the ice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Suter sucks chance kind of flipped a little bit to refs. You suck last night.
Yeah,
and you could hear that,
which isn't a
clear.
new chant in hockey. And I'm going to kind of call what we called last time about talking about Suter and maybe turning a corner here. And Alex, before we rolled tape here, he goes like, "Hey, but you know what? Minnesota had their chances. I mean, they score on a breakaway or two, or a couple of those close calls.
Kaprizov buries that one on the side. I mean."
And this is what the professional hockey players and the hockey ops at the Minnesota Wild will tell you. I mean, yeah, they can shoot their mouths off and get fined and tell the fans what they want to hear, but there's no changing it. Dean was very calm, cool, and collected about that, although internally I bet he was blowing a valve last night. I know a lot of the folks in hockey ops were blowing valves, but these guys are pros. I mean, they're up against it. Bruce Boudreau used to say, the former Wild coach, that frustration is a useless emotion. And at this point, I think that's something that's going to serve Minnesota well if they can determine that, yeah, they're frustrated, but it's a useless emotion. Game 5 is less than 24 hours away, and if we don't win down there, Katie bar the door, so to speak.
As much as we want to just sit here and talk about the refs, we got to talk about the game, obviously. There were as many opportunities as the refs set up for Dallas to win that game, we had already had for us to win that game ourselves. Breakaway chances, rebound chances, multiple breakaway chances, actually. I mean, between Foligno and Kaprizov, those two could have had 2 goals each in this game, and that would have separated it. And I think Foligno wouldn't have had to throw even that hit that got called as the tripping penalty in the end, because he wouldn't, you'd be up 4-1 or whatever. But
yeah.
So that
coulda, woulda, shouldas, right?
Yeah,
coulda, woulda, shouldas for sure. I think we talked on our last Hot Dutch Sports about kind of replicating Game 3's effort, and I thought to a large extent Minnesota did that last night, especially 5-on-5. I mean, their 5-on-5 is good enough to win hockey games on right now. Unfortunately, their penalty kill, Dallas 7 of 16 now on power play chances in this series alone, which is almost batting .500. That's an alarming statistic as we head to a Game 5 now, and something that gets shored up, and that's why it's so glaring when you get questionable penalties called. So that that adds to the emotion. But I mean, I thought they were on their toes in a lot of their zones last night again, and I thought they had continued solid efforts from a normal cast of characters. I know we've talked about getting past some of the secondary scoring. I think Goudreau and Klingberg had goals last night, but there was also helpers by Zuccarello and Boldy and Ryan Hartman. So, I mean, plenty of chances, plenty of coulda, wouldas, and shouldas, but it's just, staying out of that penalty box, getting better officiating, and if you can, I mean, obviously you can't control that, but, at least getting responsible officiating are the keys down the stretch now for Minnesota.
Yeah, and, what do you guys think of the goaltending? I'll give you my opinion off the bat. I thought Gustafsson did a hell of a job. I think, he let in 3 goals, but on a power play, a couple of them, what are you going to do? I felt like he was pretty solid. I think we would have had a tougher time with Fleury in the net. Do you guys think do you think Gustafsson did well, and do you go Gustafsson again in Game 5, or do you go back to Fleury?
I think Gustafsson had a really good game. I mean, I think he just had some really unlucky breaks. I mean, that first goal just squeaks through his legs off a skate. The second one tips off the top of his glove. And the third one just sneaks its way through traffic. I mean, I don't think there was anything that made me say, uh-oh, Gustafsson's in trouble. Like, I don't think there's any reason to go away from him right now. I don't think that loss is on him. And also, I'm lacking the confidence in Fleury after what we saw at Game 2. So I think you just got to stick with Gus. I don't know. What do you think, Gus?
I'm with you. I don't think he played badly enough to cost any game. I thought he was just fine. And candidly, eventually we can sit here and talk about, Philip Gustafsson, but we need to give a little state of the hockey love and probably a shout out to Jake Ottinger out of Lakeville, Minnesota. I mean, he was fantastic again last night, and he's a big reason Dallas is in the position that they are in, tied going back to Dallas, and even his teammates and his coaching staff. Jake Ottinger is the first words out of their mouths on why they're at and where they're at right now in this series. So good on him. I'm starting to think about scenarios for who starts a game 5 and who starts a Game 6 if you're the Minnesota Wild. And I'm just with you. I think Gus has played well enough now in 2 games to start him a third. That would set up a possible scenario, win, lose, or draw, to, if you believe in the rotation, and a Fleury back on home ice in a Game 6, and then a toss-up in Game 7 on who you're going to start, whether it's Gus or Fleury. But you got to get, first of all, you got to get to Game 5, and you got to get to Game 6 before you can get to a Game 7. But I still think it's Philip Gustafsson's team to start in the goal, and I still think that's the way the Wild will head here.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Gustafsson stood out, and Ottinger really stood out. I mean, he won that game for him, in my opinion. He was
no question.
Foligno's breakaway, he had 2 saves. Foligno,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not many goalies are making 2 saves on a breakaway chance like that, and just shutting down Kaprizov one-on-one, that's pretty incredible. And there were just
he's
so
in
many
fuego.
chances.
He's in fuego right now, and if Foligno would have had a third whack at that one, when you're in fuego, you probably, if you're Jake Ottinger, make that save, save as well. I was thinking, and not just because I thought Connor Dewar might have a breakout game. I think in many ways he did when we all made our little prognostications at the end of our last Hot Dish podcast. But I thought that fourth line last night was really an energy line, especially early. I mean, they weren't just kind of holding water. They were on the attack. And I actually thought that fourth line, I kept texting my daughter who was at the game. I said, watch that fourth line. They're going to get a goal here. And they had their chances. And so those things are the good news. If you're building from the bottom, fourth line to the third line to the second to the first, they're putting it all together and putting it all together at the right time. And now they're in that hostile environment. There's another way to look at the horrific goaltending or officiating here. Maybe it turns into some sort of igniter, or maybe it turns into it's the Minnesota Wild versus the world apparently in the National Hockey League right now. So we'll show them. It's funny how players and organizations can feed off the us versus the world mentality. I think you could see the Minnesota Wild maybe adapting that theme here for a Game 5.
Yeah, and when you got something like that for all those guys to rally around, I mean, that's just such a great way to kind of get everyone together, bring them all on the same page. And, you all got one common goal. Let's work together and get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this feels like, the team that we saw, the Wild team we saw in Game 1 and Game 2, I feel like now we have a better team than we even had then. It just feels like everything is clicking. It felt like if we would have won 6-1 last night and played the exact same way, I wouldn't have been surprised. Where Game 2, when we lost 7-3, felt like we played like a 7-3 loss. Yesterday's loss did not feel like as big of a loss as it was. I mean, it was 3-2, almost 3-1. We got, that goal late in the game, but I don't know. It really felt like we outplayed them to me. And I'm very excited to see what they do going back to Dallas, because if there's ever been a fire lit under this team, it is now. It is Suter. It is the refs. It is half the Dallas bench for Foligno, if not all of them. I mean, if Foligno's walking around in Dallas and he happens to bump into Jamie Benn or anything like that, I think we're going to see some pretty amazing street fight videos.
Everything's bigger in Texas, right? So
yeah, he's ready to go.
Emotion is bigger too. I agree.
He's been
100%.
a surprising standout to me in this series. I'll be honest.
I agree.
I mean, I love Moose, but he seems like the face of our team. If you're anywhere else in the world watching outside of Minnesota, when we know Kaprizov is the face of our team, and Boldy and Gustafsson this season, but Foligno right now feels like he's the captain. Even though we know Spurgeon.
I think we all have our kind of hockey buddy threads during games, and across one of my threads last night was, I couldn't believe how many people were texting. I can't believe I wanted them to trade Foligno or get rid of Foligno after they were watching him in the playoffs now.
And Dumba.
To that point. And Dumba. I mean, it's just like, all of the, armchair defensemen or goaltenders or whatever you call an armchair quarterback in hockey have really come full circle on a lot of these guys. And Foligno off the top, could be an MVP of the series here himself, just for his not only his points but his inspiration. And that's it. The series goes well for sure. But Moose has had a terrific series. He's beloved by his teammates. The coaching staff loves him, and you need a Marcus Foligno on this team right now. That's got so much, that's so emotionally charged, in my opinion.
Yeah, Foligno's been an absolute beacon for this team so far. He's stepped up, played the physical game, and he's been a leader to the truest extent, and it's been super fun hockey to watch. And we mentioned it earlier, Matt Dumba, another player who has just turned it on recently. I mean, the past 2 months, that man has made himself so much more money this offseason. It is crazy.
Yeah. I thought the Swedes were good again last night. Brock Faber continues to act like he's 30 years old and has played in like 5 Stanley Cup final series. It's all systems go. I'm with you guys. You turn the corner and kind of, put your emotions and check your emotions at the curb here with the officiating situation. And I'm with you, Cole. There's not great panic. I mean, as far as fan panic or media panic, or I don't know. I just think I think that's a credit to Dean and the Wild that they've legitimized themselves as an organization. And how many times have we talked on this podcast about when they are down or when they are bad, they don't stay down or bad for long? You have to really microscope that now in the playoffs because you don't get a chance to be bad for long. But I think you're going to see a pretty big rebound effort, and I think you'll see that in the first 5 minutes tomorrow at American Airlines Center.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the refs are going to try to have a rebound themselves as well. I think they're going to try to call a completely clean game. They know what's on the line. I mean, they may even let guys get away with a little bit more than they have before because they're afraid to make that mistake that they made in the past, even though they want to make sure they shut everything down and just really don't let this get out of hand. I don't know. It's that tough balance, and I think that's the balance that both the Stars and the Wild are dealing with too, is they want to go out there and just kick people, punch people, do whatever they got to do, but you can't because you got to score goals, you got to win, you got to stay out of the penalty box, and it feels like this is becoming a series of who can stay out of the penalty box and who can capitalize when the other team is in there. And so Game 5 is going to be really exciting to see. I don't know. It's playing in Dallas, though. Those fans are going to be roaring. They're going to be booing Dumba instead of Suter. We're going to be hearing Foligno, I think, taking a lot of heat from the fans, right? I mean, we talked about
the playoffs.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, in our last podcast, we kind of, at the end of the podcast, kind of picked somebody that we think was going to click. I know you picked Dewar, Gis. I picked Duhaime. Dewar did pretty solid. Duhaime, I mean, he had 3 hits, a shot on goal. Nothing that really, he played a solid game, but he didn't play as well as I expected him to play. Mid-C, really. Middleton stood out to me in this game. Is there anyone else other than, you know, yes, Alex Kaprizov, the Ferrari you picked? He definitely stood out, but he couldn't bury. He just couldn't bury. I think, to me, Middleton stood out. Is there anything you guys want to add on Middleton or anybody else that really you wish you had picked as your click to pick?
I wish I could have gone with John Klingberg because he had himself an absolute game. He had an apple and a goal, and he also saved a goal from going in. Like, just all around, top to bottom, a great game for Klingberg, kind of getting some revenge against the former squad. What did you think, Gis?
I think I would have stuck, you know me, I'm a 4-wheel drive pickup guy. I would have stuck down on that fourth line somewhere. I thought about Duhaime, actually, Cole's pick last podcast for last night. But I went with Dewar for just, I don't know. I thought that fourth line was good last night. And, you know, when you're picking a fourth liner to make a difference, sometimes it's doing what they did. So maybe I won that little prognostication pick. I honestly, I think you did. I think if Kaprizov would have been able to bury, Alex obviously would have taken it, but the fact that he couldn't score really was kind of a bummer. It's too bad. That would have been a big difference maker, but let's end it with my pick to click next week, Marcus Johansson. Just watching his stick handling skills, I think he is set up to, he could get a hat trick, man, if they get the puck on his stick. He just looks like a young Marcus Johansson again right now. He is playing hard. So that's my pick. Alex, what you got?
I'm going to go with his good old buddy Peanut Butter, Mr. Matt Boldy. I think we're going to see a little twine tickler from him this time, maybe another apple. That little magic duo, I think we're going to see them click again next tomorrow. Wow.
I'm going to see if I can get the 8 cylinders of the Ferrari fired up here. The Wild are in the position that they're in largely because of number 97, Kirill Kaprizov, and it is time. I mean, the time is near. Yes, I know he's playing with that leg injury, and yes, I know it's a lot of pressure, but other superstars in the National Hockey League do it, and Kirill Kaprizov is a superstar in the National Hockey League, and it needs to be Kirill Kaprizov time come Tuesday night in Dallas for Game 5.
Yep. I think any of those 3 guys, you get the puck on their stick, they can work some magic, they can find the twine, like Alex said. I mean, we got some great players on this team, and hopefully the fourth line stands up. Hopefully the refs stop putting everybody in the box and just let these guys play hockey on both sides. Honestly, I just want to see some more hockey play. This isn't basketball. We don't need to be calling fouls. Just call penalties. How about that, right? That's my parting shot. call penalties, not fouls, because everybody knows the difference. And make sure, everybody watched our last podcast, gave a ton of comments. We went through everything. A lot of Stars fans chirping at the Wild fans in the comments of our last video. So we appreciate all the feedback, lots of positive feedback. And I do think that the Wild fans overtook the Stars fans in our comments. So, hey, that's what we like to see. And thanks to everybody who subscribed. Make sure you click that bell button, subscribe, so you get a notification when we post a new video. We cover everything Minnesota sports. We talk about the Twins. We're going to talk about the Wolves. We got Vikings content. Just give us a follow on Twitter, YouTube. We appreciate it. We try not to put too many ads in your face and just really try to have a conversation about what everybody else is talking about in their group text, like Eric said, sitting on the couch, and that's what we want to deliver to you guys. So we appreciate it. Thank you for watching again. We'll have another podcast coming up soon. And obviously, go Wild.
Grit first.